Venezuelan authorities say more than 900 people are now known to have died in Wednesday's two huge earthquakes, and more than 3,000 have been injured. Another strong tremor was felt off Venezuela's northern coast on Friday afternoon. Rescue teams are in a race against time to reach people trapped in the rubble of collapsed buildings. The United Nations says more than 50,000 people are still unaccounted for. At least 1,000 international search and rescue workers have been deployed, with teams from countries including the UK, US, Turkey and Brazil. Hospitals in the port city of La Guaira, the worst affected area, are reportedly overwhelmed. Numerous buildings in the city have been damaged or destroyed. Will Grant reports.
For more than a minute, two separate earthquakes shook Venezuela to its core. For some survivors, that minute has now become the longest days of their lives. With their loved ones still trapped beneath the rubble of flattened buildings, they're reduced to the desperation of waiting and hoping. There are few stories as tough as Natasha's. A resident of the badly affected coastal town of La Guaira, she says her two daughters, Leonela and Sasha, aged 22 and 23, were working in a nearby shopping mall when it came down. They're still missing. I just want them to please reappear, she sobs. There is still hope. Among the incredible moments of survival, a toddler was plucked from the carnage of crumpled concrete and twisted metal. Scarcely believable after so many hours in the dust and darkness. Elsewhere, a woman lost to her family has been brought out safely too. Still, the urgency grows with every hour that passes. Help has started to come in from around the world, from Mexico and the US to Cuba and Spain. The UK is among those which has sent rescue workers with sniffer dogs and aid. Others are sending medical teams. This is really quite a shocking scene. I lived on this very corner for several years. My building was just over here, and as you can see, one of the ones opposite has been completely flattened in what is one of the worst affected neighborhoods in Caracas. There are neighbors sitting out waiting for news as the earth-moving equipment removes the rubble, and this is a scene that's being repeated across northern Venezuela. The trauma of this experience will be forever etched into Venezuelans' collective memory. For the partygoers enjoying the national holiday who suddenly found themselves with nowhere to run as the quakes rattled the streets. Or the passengers waiting on the tarmac when their plane began to lurch back and forth. Each evening, thousands have little choice but to bed down in the parks, in the streets or in the shelters. Hospitals are overwhelmed and the government is struggling to cope. The country's most powerful earthquake in over a century has wrought some of the greatest devastation in Venezuela's modern history too. Will Grant, BBC News, Caracas.
The BBC's Vanessa Silva has been reporting from the capital, Caracas, since Wednesday's disaster. She's now travelled to La Guaira, where she sent this report.
The extent of the damage throughout La Guaira state is really impressive. Building collapses like this one is being seen along all the littoral of this state that is between a mountain and a sea, at the Caribbean Sea. In this state at least 1,500 infrastructures collapses between buildings, schools, shops, malls. The devastation is really impressive here. We have to speak with relatives that were telling us that they, at the very beginning, were only them looking for their loved ones. Now we can see around some volunteers that has come from many regions of the country to help in the searching of the survivor, to help removing the concrete or the rest of the buildings that collapsed. At this time, there is many people arriving to La Guaira, so the transit is almost collapsed here. It's stuck because it's a narrow state. So, and too many people arriving and too many people leaving at this moment. The state was militarized early in the morning, but now it's a bit of chaos because there is too much people trying to come with supplies. The state has been militarized, but control all these situations that are facing now is really complicated. As the time goes by, it will be sad the numbers of victims that probably we will know.
Well, for more on this, I've been speaking to Maria Graterol, a freelance journalist in Caracas.
Here it's quite complicated because of you have seen and my colleagues have explained a lot. It's really complicated because people don't have the tools they need to get those that are still under the building. So basically, when the government doesn't answer, it's Venezuelan people that do it. They do it because they are hoping to get their relative from the places they are trapped in. And that's the key point in here, that they are doing as much as possible with what they have, because we have to remember that this is a country that is facing another crisis. I mean, we were living in a crisis before. 88% of the population was living in poverty and 32% more in extreme poverty when these two earthquakes happened. So now, what we are seeing is a response of civilians. They're organizing themselves. They're trying to help as much as possible. And here in Caracas, at least, we can see people that are coming from from other regions in the country to help. And we have to say that, for example, in hospitals, the medical supplies are brought by other people, because you know that hospitals are facing a crisis. There's no water in most of them, and they're almost collapsing too. So the response is mostly endured by Venezuelans, not exactly by the government, because people are feeling, and they have said that they have the sensation that the response is not being as fast as they need it. It's not being as fast as they need to save more people.
I mean, the numbers are just staggering, aren't they, of the numbers missing. In terms of the international help that's come in, several countries have been getting involved, but is there sort of concern that that hasn't been enough or quick enough?
Yes, the concern is that it's not enough. It's not enough because the reports, the official reports, they give some numbers. But for example, some civilians, they have created like a web page in which they have reported more than 10,000 people missing, and that's a lot. And there are not like as I said before, there's not like an official record that can tell us right now about the magnitude of this event, because when the government says something about it, they always say like, we're not including numbers from La Guaira, which was the area of the disaster. So what the numbers that we have, we perceive them that like they are not complete, and that they are not showing what the reality is in here in the country.
And what are these shelters like that people are staying in? Will Grant saying that people are just sleeping out on the street, in parks and the like? I mean, there's so many people who don't have anywhere to stay, aren't they, that you have to deal with?
Well, for example, in Caracas, the shelters are basically parks that are open spaces. So people are just in there waiting. They sleep on mats, or also just on the floor. They put there a blanket and spend days in there. Like, well, we see a lot of kids in there too, and it is true that they are receiving a lot of help, like with food, water, but that's not the only thing they need. They need a proper accommodation, because they don't know for how long they're going to be living in that situation. And that's like a lot of this, it's like a disaster, because they're registering people, but there's not like a huge, like a list, an organized list in which you can go and check if your family member is in there or not. They're putting people from La Guaira in a place, but some others, like people who lost their buildings, their apartments in Caracas, they say like they feel like they're paying, like the authorities are paying more attention to people from La Guaira and are not taking good care of them. So it's like a
Okay.
really complicated situation, and it's really sad because it's like they're living in there, but they're still like there's not a place where they can go anymore, and they're waiting to see if their buildings can be checked or evaluated, so to see like if they can go back there or not.
Maria Graterol from Caracas, there, freelance journalist.